Looking ahead, Konstantin, what do you think we should be looking out for? We've got Russian Victory Day in a couple of weeks, and obviously continued developments happening on the European side now that the Hungarian election resulted in a significant blow for Moscow. But Bulgaria has voted in favour of a candidate who's pro-Putin. But what do you think we should be focusing on?
We already see the chaos in every single part of lives of Russia. Russian propagandists, very important ones, are turning against Putin. This is unthinkable. It was unthinkable last year. Now it's happening. Okay, I believe that there will be the major change in Russia. I believe that Putin is going to be out of the office, out of the job, sometimes by September. Major changes. Russia is pregnant with changes.
This is the Global Gambit.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Global Gambit, where we are returned to our monthly collaboration with Konstantin Samoilov to take a check-in on the Russian economy. And given the state of the world, roughly speaking, with the Strait of Hormuz being open, closed, dirty ceasefire, as it's being called by some, happening just in the Middle East, well, Russia's economy, you would think, is doing well. It's got a lot of income. It's got a lot of benefits. But as we know, that's not really the case. And people who are looking at this much more integrally, like Konstantin, know that the structural integrity of the Russian economy is anything but okay. So, Konstantin, in this quick fire, I think, sort of update, I want to know exactly from you what has been going on in Russia in the past 2-3 weeks, month that we last spoke.
Pyotr, nothing unpredictable. Everything that we spoke of and forecasted and discussed is happening, and it's intensifying. I don't know of anyone who at this point thinks, oh, Russian economy has benefits and it's doing well, circumventing the sanctions. No, not even Russian propaganda is doing that. They used to sugarcoat heavily. They don't do it anymore because they can't. They can't. People are starving in Russia. Not many, but that's a start. Federal employees aren't getting paid by the state because there's no money. Again, that's a minority at this point, but it's there. It's happening. It's the facts. So it's how would I put it mildly? It's demising. It has stopped functioning the way it's supposed to function.
But what does that mean in a sort of technical sense, in an on-the-ground sense of like just materials, day-to-day living? It's all well and good to look at GDP figures or economic stagnation or inflation figures, whatever. Titular data, right? What is actually being experienced in different parts of the Russian state?
It's a very good question because you're absolutely right. Economy isn't about macroeconomic key indicators. Okay, it's not about what we see written in a paper. It's what you see on the street of a city of Rostov-on-Don or Novosibirsk or Omsk. I'm not talking about Moscow. I'm putting it out of equation because Moscow it's living on different set of rules. Okay, the rest of Russian cities. Now, where do I start? Well, first of all, the communal services aren't working. Trash isn't getting removed. It gets removed only not every day, but once or twice a week now. So there are piles of trash everywhere. Snow, and there's still snow in Russia in many places, isn't being shoveled or plowed. Ice on the roads. And the roads in places where snow is off has melted already. They are in terrible conditions and they're not getting repaired. They usually, month of March and April are usually the maintenance months, in Russia, where everything gets like fixed after the winter. Not this winter. Now, a lot of people are taking whatever they can easily part with in their homes and taking that stuff to the streets and putting newspapers or sheets on the ground and selling their stuff to get some money to buy food, bread. A lot of people aren't getting paid. Federal employees, I've mentioned it before, teachers, kindergarten teachers, a lot are being laid off because simply the local budgets, the provincial budgets cannot afford to pay them anymore because they're so much in red, they go to commercial banks to loan money at commercial rates just to continue like basic operations. Buses don't come anymore. Well, they do come, but they don't come as often as they're supposed to. Okay, so there are huge crowds waiting for buses. I've seen that happening. I saw it in the USSR. I lived through it. Your father saw it happening in the USSR and late in the 80s. So I know how it looks like. I know how it smells. It doesn't smell good. It's happening again. What else?
Well, I mean, I can just jump because from what I understand, back in 2025, there was about 68 regions that had a budget crisis. I remember reading that quite vividly. But now it's 74. So we've got 74 of the 89.
78 now. 78.
Oh, 78. So have a budget crisis. So at least 2 are insolvent and have run out of cash. And transfers from the federal budget to what you mentioned just a minute ago have reduced by 30 to 40% in the past 4 or 5 years. So, and that's without then taking into consideration what's happening with oil exports and impacts of the continued Ukrainian strikes. I think it was the Swedish Ministry of Military Intelligence sort of said that Russia is manipulating the data to new extents never seen before. What's your take on that?
It is obvious. You don't have to be British intelligence or Swedish intelligence to actually know that. It's obvious. It has been obvious for the past 4 years. I mean, let's just apply logic. Me and you, we're not intelligence, okay? We're just journalists, reporters, right? And we're trying to get to the truth. Now, let's look at the situation in Russia. Russia has a statistics agency called Rosstat. Historically, Rosstat has been publishing, accumulating, analyzing, and publishing all kinds of data in Russia, all kinds of statistics. And all of a sudden, in 2023 or 2024, they start making some of industries or some parts of usual statistics secret. They make it confidential. Moreover, they make it so that if someone releases information or leaks it or whatever, that person would be criminally responsible. What does it tell us? I mean, in a normal situation, the state, why would they do that, right? It means that situation is extraordinary and it requires extraordinary measures. That's at least what the Russian state thinks. And now an incredible amount of different statistics has been classified, okay? So obviously things are not well and not right. Obviously everything that comes out of Russian statistics agency Rosstat has been cooked. Obviously, I believe that the Swedish intelligence has reported on the inflation, that the real inflation is 3 times higher than the reported one. Well, Pyotr, I've been telling about exactly this for what? For the past year and a half? I mean, you don't need highly paid intelligence of Sweden to come up with things like that. I believe that a couple months before, the German intelligence came up with a similar statistics. I think it was about the budget deficit in Russia. Yeah, There's a huge budget deficit I've been talking about. We discussed it, me and you, in our broadcasts, 5-6 months ago? Yes, I think they're absolutely right. And, so that's what we have.
What I'm interested, though, Konstantin, is that what makes this different now is that up until this point, the Russian economy has been in a wartime footing, which means that the defense industry and certain heavy industrial areas are not affected because they're obviously benefiting from greater activity, investment, expenditure. But now the trickle-down effect from the systemic structural economic problems is even affecting places like industrial production and construction, i.e. the Russian defense sector is even being affected by the broader implosion or slow car crash, as we call it, of the Russian economy. What does that tell you?
Well, that proves my point that Russian economy is demising. A lot of people ask me, what is demising? That's exactly what it is. Russian state cannot continue functioning properly. And the military-industrial complex dies last. Okay, but it started dying last year when large, iconic enterprises of the military-industrial complex, such as Uralvagonzavod, that produces Russian tanks, announced that it was laying off 10% of the personnel. First, they said it's the personnel that is not involved in industry part, military part of this company, and then they basically laid off 10% of the entire holding, the entire huge enterprise. That was then the trouble started. Okay, 25. Right now, it's just intensifying. Okay, let me simplify. Let me put it in a very plain language, easy to understand for a non-economist. Now, you have a budget, you have some income, you have a job, and you have expenses. You are a household, for example. You have a family, you head of the family, and you earn so much. Let's say £100,000 per year, and you spend 80,000 per year. So you are coming out all right. You come out like on top every year. 20,000 you keep in your pocket, or you take it to the bank and deposit and earn interest. Great. You do that year after year after year, accumulate a hefty amount in your reserves or savings. And then all of a sudden, your boss calls you up and says, look, I'm not going to pay you as much. I'm going to halve your salary. So you're going to receive $20,000, $50,000 instead of 50,000 pounds instead of 100,000 per year. But you can't quit because there's a new law. You are obliged to work and keep this job, and you basically can't quit. You go home and you say, well, things are tough now. We earn 50, we spend 80. What are we going to do? And, your members of the family say, well, you know what? Something very bad is coming up ahead in a few years. Instead of saving and pinching pennies, let's just start living life, living it up. Let's catch up on what we were saving for years. Now let's spend it all because we don't know what's going to happen in a couple of years. Buy a new car, you start spending not 80 but 120 per year, and then you just go nuts. You take luxury vacations, you buy expensive food, and that's exactly what happened to Russia. But then the moment comes when, and you're using up all the reserves you saved up over the years, right? But then one moment comes, you go to your bank, and your banker goes, you know what? Your account balance is zero. You don't have any money, and we're not gonna give you a credit card, and because you're not earning enough, your credit rating is down, and you just stand there in front of the bank, and what do? I don't know. It's time for you to lose your house. It's time for you to have your car repossessed. It's time for bank people come and repossess all the stuff that you have. And that's exactly what's happening in Russia. The bill is due and the balance is zero. And this is now in April, in spring of 2026. For 4 years, Putin was using up his savings that he had made over the years when he was riding the oil wave, high prices of oil. And now the money's gone. What are they going to do now? I have no clue, because Putin is out of options. Now he's going to start playing the blame game. He's going to blame Nabiullina, top economist people, and he's going to sacrifice them publicly, saying they're enemies. They brought Russia to the knees, and I'm going to execute them. And he will very soon, okay, within a couple months probably. But after that, I don't know.
Yeah, it's one of the things I think, which is that even if the serious problems in Russia don't change the strategic goals of the Kremlin or their view of like NATO and Europe and so on, it will affect how they try to pursue those goals, right? How they try to achieve those goals. So it will induce behavioral change. They will behave differently, even if they don't have different ways of trying to reach it, right? So what do you think that will mean? How do you think Putin will be trying to change how he achieves his goals if the internal structure and economic stability is looking that dire?
I want to make sure we're talking about the same goals and we understand his goals, in a similar manner. What do you think his goals are?
Well, I think that's less important than what I'm saying is how he goes about to achieve them. That's more the framing of the question. I mean, at this
Okay.
point, I don't think I know what his strategic goals are. I think it's partially survival, but also to try and claim some victory in Ukraine. The Europeans have just signed this new pact, right? $90 billion, which is going to be a
90 billion,
huge boost.
yeah.
Yeah,
90
so
billion.
that's another big, significant blow for the Kremlin's perspective. So I think it's difficult to tell if Putin's precise strategic goals have changed.
You've
There's
said it.
still debate around
You've
what
said it.
made him
You've said it.
motivated to do it.
Pyotr, you've said it. I absolutely agree with you. His strategic goal is survival, and everything else, like victory in Ukraine, it's just means to achieve that goal. Okay? He
Right.
will not stop the war in Ukraine. He will not, because that means his instant death. Because he will have to answer the elites, the people, the special services. Nothing is achieved in Ukraine. Russian army is losing ground as we speak right now. It is falling apart, the army, not the economy. Okay? The main goal for the army is to hold the ground, and they are not doing it. Okay? Putin cannot stop the war because it means he's out of the office and he's dead. His system falls apart. What happens after that, we can discuss and argue. No one knows at this point. But you're absolutely right. Survive. He needs to survive another day, another week, another month if he can. That's his strategic goal. And right now he's doing everything he can to prolong his power. And I think shutting down internet is one of the biggest steps on the way there to keep on hanging on to the power. At least that's how he thinks, and he understands this process, because he knows what happened in Iran 4 months ago when the Iranians went to the streets and they started messaging each other, and they started organizing. And he doesn't like that. He's shutting down internet in Russia. He's succeeded. There's very little internet left, okay? So his goal is not changing. It's to survive another day.
Yeah, I think the argument there is that of course, there's a degree of survival as a part of it, but how does it directly relate to Europe, Ukraine, and the broader sort of military objectives there? Because I think a lot of people look towards the kinetic warfare, the juicy topics of the explosions, and less about the gradual sort of shifts occurring in the political behind the scenes sort of stuff, because that's less easy to grab onto and feel worried or passionate about, you know what I mean? But certainly I think overall Putin's mindset is shifting from one purely about how much can I beat Ukraine to can I last in Ukraine to can I even last myself in Moscow. So, I mean, looking ahead, Konstantin, what do you think we should be looking out for? We've got Russian Victory Day in a couple of weeks, and obviously continued developments happening on the European side now that the Hungarian election resulted in a significant blow for Moscow. But Bulgaria has voted in favor of a candidate who's pro-Putin. Not that, though, I think that's a seismic shift in the broader scheme of things. But what do you think we should be focusing on?
Pyotr, I recall our conversation exactly 1 year ago in April of 2025, and we were forecasting what was going to happen in May. And I remember I predicted that Putin would claim victory on May 9th during the V-Day parade. That's what happened. Well, things were looking fairly bright for Putin back then. He was supported by Donald Trump 12 months ago at this time. Things are absolutely different now. Vladimir Putin does not have strategy. He is down to the tactics of surviving another week. As I said, another day, another week. Right now, they are deciding whether to hold the parade or not, because things are so bad that they cannot guarantee the safety of the parade. What if, in front of 146 million people, because most Russians watch the parade live, a Ukrainian drone come and blow up, okay? There is a good chance of that happening. So they are deciding whether to hold a parade or not. If they cancel, that's going to be a huge slap. It's a shame because it just would show that Putin is not confident enough for protection of the biggest event of the year. And then if a Ukrainian drone or some kind of attack does happen during a parade, then it's going to be even bigger slap in the face. So I forecast in the next few coming weeks, chaos. We already see the chaos in every single part of lives of Russia. Russian propagandists, very important ones, are turning against Putin. Solovyov is turning against Putin. Remeslo is turning against Putin. They calling him, well, Remeslo calls him a thief, a war criminal, and a traitor to Russia. This is unthinkable. It was unthinkable last year. Now it's happening, okay? So economy is in chaos. No one controls economy. The government, the agencies, ministries in charge of the economy, they simply out of options. They are borrowing like crazy, but that's not helping. It's just driving inflation up, and that's it. The Russian military is falling apart, and I forecast chaos increasing. That's the only thing I can say for sure right now. I am also waiting for changes. I believe that there will be the major change in Russia. I believe that Putin is going to be out of the office, out of the job, sometimes by September. Major changes. Russia is pregnant with changes. They're coming. We'll see more and more Russia shaking before the eruption. That's my biggest forecast.
Oh, changes are coming, everybody. Eruptions. Big things on the horizon, according to Konstantin Samoilov of Inside Russia.
Mark my words. Mark my words, please.
Oh, wow. Then we certainly will be. I'll be sure to put this as the intro. We'll make sure that we have this as a separate banner that we can keep in a reference to see when that day comes. Konstantin, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. For everyone watching, do check out Konstantin's videos and work, and if you enjoyed this one, then of course give it a like and subscribe to both the channels to support what we do in providing you direct unfiltered truth around the situation within Russia, within the economy, and of course how it all affects the war in Ukraine and the world. But we'll see you all next time. Take care.